What's up, YouTube? So today I'm probably going to be shooting a video, maybe two videos on installing the power steering kit that I got from my 66 C10. I got this kit back in March. I ordered it through Summit Racing. It's an actual CPP product. So it took me about 6 months to get it. I've already opened up the box and made sure everything was the way it's supposed to be, no damage or anything, and looks like everything's good to go. So here in a minute I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera around and kind of just open up all the boxes, show you what comes in the kit, and then show you what you need to buy additional to the kit outside of like power steering fluid and some kind of drive belt, however you're going to be driving the drive belt. But this has the original manual steering box, and so it still has the original rag joint. So those came riveted from the factory. They're not bolted on. It does come with a new rag joint, and you'll see that in the kit. So I have to grind that off or cut them off or however that's going to be. And then once I've already had the bolts broken loose from the steering box, so those should come apart pretty easy. But other than that, I've already got it on jack stands. I've already got the wheels removed. I went ahead and removed the passenger side. And the only reason I did that is because I want to inspect the brakes, make sure everything looks good, check all my fasteners, and I'm gonna go ahead and grease everything again while I got it in the air and on jack stands. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking here. I'm gonna flip the camera around, get all these parts laid out on the bench, and show you what I got, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, let's get to it. All right, so there's the actual part number for the 60 to 66 C10. You will have to specify if you're going to be using the original steering column or an aftermarket. I'm going to be using the original, so that's what I told them. Here's the power steering pump, brand new, painted, ready to go. It does not come with a pulley, so you will have to order a pulley. CPP offers a double groove power steering pump pulley, so that's what I went with. Really nice. Looks, looks like an original factory style piece. It even has some kind of part number stamped there, which is kind of cool. And then I have the single groove crank pulley that was on the factory, or the original 283. So it's still the original crank groove or crank pulley on it, but I had to go to a double groove. I wish they offered a triple groove. That way I'll have it when I do air conditioning in the future. There's the part number of that. So Pitman arm is greasable, has the grease fitting there, so that's good to go, because you cannot use a manual Pitman arm on the power steering box. New shaft there it comes with, and there is some cutting involved on the column, so we'll have to get into that and see what's involved there. New hoses. There's the new rag joint, which this thing right here is kind of interesting. I don't know what that is, so we'll have to figure that out once we get into this. Hardware, and then here is the brackets. These are support brackets when you mount the steering box, because there's a lot of force that steering box puts on the frame, and you could potentially crack the frame if you didn't do that. So, and then finally, the actual steering box itself. This is a quick ratio unit that CPP makes, so hopefully I really like that. Hopefully it steers a lot better than the old white 1970 I had, so, because it had power steering, but it was just a factory steering box. So that's pretty much all the parts you need. The only other thing you'll need is a belt. You'll need to have some kind of belt drive this, but you'll have to make the measurements and all that once you get everything installed, based on what pulleys you already have on the truck itself, alternator, water pump, stuff like that, and then whatever you're going to be using when you install the new stuff. So we're pretty much going to pull that 55-year-old dinosaur off, and we'll go from there. I'm going to go ahead and set up the camera, and we'll get started. Alright, first things first, 15/16 on this Pitman Arm Nut. I went ahead and got it started a little bit, so I didn't look struggling on this video. Alright, got that backed out. Go ahead and give it a few love taps and see if that thing will drop. Hopefully it will. If not, I got a tie rod separator that I can jam in through there. Because like I said, we're not reusing that, so I'm not worried about it. Screw it, I'll just use the tie rod separator. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I'll go ahead and remove the, I think it's 4. I don't remember now. Where's my flashlight? 3. So there's 2 bottom, 1 top bolt that holds this on. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those. Alright, so I read the instructions and I don't need this anymore. So instead of grinding these rivets off, I'm just going to cut the column shaft right off somewhere as close as possible, because when you get the new one, you're replacing all that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off, and this thing should fall out of the way. And that'll be the last of that. Alright guys. Well, no turning back now. Now that that's cut out the way, what I'm going to do off camera is kind of figure out how those brackets, read the instructions, kind of figure out where all the holes have got to be made, and then once I know what has to be done, I'll show y'all what I got to do. Alright, so took a minute to figure it out. I had to read the instructions and kind of figure out how this went together. But I finally figured out this plate right here goes on the inside of the frame, and these 2 holes here, the upper front one and the lower rear one, line up, and then from there you will, on the outside of the frame, this bracket here, the outer bracket, will go like that. So just imagine this on the inside of the frame. This is how your bracket would go. Clock it a little bit more. So roughly it's going to be like that. And then you have to drill additional holes. I believe the way this is working here, let's put that back the way it goes, that this bolt here, the short one with the nut, goes through that upper hole, because the actual box mounts to these 4 holes right there. So this one will just be holding it up, mounting the frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount that, and we'll go from there. All right, so this is what it should look like. Obviously that other bracket's on the back side, and it says in the instructions to have the head of the bolts face inside the frame towards the engine, and then the nut side towards the wheel. It did not come with a nut, so obviously I have several nuts and bolts in my garage, so I just use that to hold that nice and tight. You will not need a nut when you mount the actual box itself. This is the only bolt and nut you will need for the bracket support. So I'm going to drill these 2 holes. These are the only 2 you have to drill. This one kind of is like this bit of a frame's here sticking through, so it makes sense now that I'm looking at it why they give you 3 long ones They give you 3 long bolts like this and 1 short one. More likely the short one goes here so it doesn't hit the frame. So now that that's been explained a little bit better, now you kind of get a visual of what it looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and drill these 2 holes. I got a 7/16 drill bit ready to go, and we'll go from there. Sometimes you got to put it on the 1 setting to get more torque out of that drill bit. Keep in mind when you're doing this stuff, make sure you ain't got nothing, no lines, cooling lines of any for transmission or fuel or just whatever. Make sure you ain't got nothing on the inside, wiring or whatever. I don't, so I'm not worried about it. All right, so I got the steering box out so you get a better visual of what it looks like. Looks like a pretty standard box. So right here on the instructions, let me move this bolt out of the way. Right here on the instructions, yeah, be careful. Right here, with the 7/16 drill bit, drill out the threads on the lower forward mounting boss of the steering box. The bolt will be installed through this hole on the steering box and thread into the forward lower mounting hole on the new mounting bracket. So, lower forward. As you can tell, if this is on the frame, this is what it would look like. That's going to the steering column. There's your Pitman arm that obviously is going to be facing down. So it's this hole right here, because in this bracket here, let's get up close. See, that has threads, the rest of them don't. The rest of them just go through. So, since I already got the 7/16 bit already in, we're going to drill that 1 hole right there out. And then this should be ready to install. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we will go from there. Well, that was a bit of a challenge. I actually stepped down to 3/8, which went pretty easy. Then a 13/32, I believe that's the size, and then a 7/16. And that drill bit kept catching in there. You'd have to back out, catch it, it just kind of, you had to work it in and out. And I had so much, drill bit was torquing it down so much, I actually pulled it out of the vise because I really didn't crank down on my vise. I didn't want to distort or mess this up, but it kind of scratched the paint up. No big deal. But holes out it now drilled out. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount this box, and we'll see what it looks like. So I got the box finally mounted. I will have to take this back down, and doing so because, like they stated in the instructions, and I'm not sitting there challenging it, it's just you have to get this in there easily, you'll have to take the box back off to put this on. Now, another thing you could do is remove, like this tie rod end, and then lift all this up, mount it, and then position it in there. I'm just going to go ahead and bolt this onto the box itself. I also got to do the rag joint. I'm going to go ahead and get that mounted as well, and we'll go from there. Sometimes companies get a bad rap for bad instructions, and this is one of them. Right here, this is towards the end. If you're using original steering column, skip this step, and I'll show this step in a second. Slide the new and immediate shaft over the 3/4 inch double D steering shaft. Connect the rag joint to the steering box. So it's saying that is the original steering column. Skip all this step. It also says here, using aftermarket columns, skip this step. In order to connect your new steering box to the old steering shaft, you will need to cut the double D portion off your new intermediate shaft. So unless your new shaft that comes in the kit, it's telling you basically to cut all this off. Why it says that there, skip this step, but then here tells you if you're running an original steering column, skip this step. So I don't really understand what that means. But basically, you got to cut all this off because my shaft is round. That did not sound appropriate, but you know what I'm saying. My steering column shaft is round. It's not flat spotted on either side. So I got to cut all this off. Went ahead and made a, I may not be using this, but I went ahead and made a divot spot to drill a hole, because it does recommend right here securing this column, steering column, to the new intermediate shaft. This can be done in several ways. CPP recommends drilling through the new intermediate shaft and the steering column shaft and bolting them together, which is what I want to do. This will allow you to simply unbolt them in order to remove any part of the assembly in the future. You can do a 1/4-inch pin as well, roll pin, or you can weld them together, but they also say welding it would make it much more difficult to disassemble in the future. So I'm not doing the last two. I'm going to do the whole. I may go further down. I haven't decided yet, but I need to cut this portion and then slide this on before I even put the box in, because everything's put together. Got the new Pitman arm on. I went ahead and painted it off camera because it does come raw steel, and it's bolted on there. Got the rag joint on there. It will bolt on right now. It's not hitting the shaft. However, if I did that, I would never get this on unless I unbolted the steering column and pulled it up. So I'm going to cut this off, slide it on the shaft, and then I'll put the box on. So I'm going to go do that, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, there it is. Steering box should be officially installed. Got the rag joint bolted down. The Pitman arm nuts bolted down. Castle nut, just got to put the cotter pin in. That's torqued down or as tight as it needs to be. Steering box, all the bolts are tight. I may torque everything down to specification, but other than that, pretty much done. I had to go ahead and cut, there's maybe about 1 inch more of shaft off the column, so that worked out great. What I did, because this is a pretty snug fit, which is good, I put a little bit of grease on the shaft. That way this slid in there a lot better. That way this can be centered like it needs to be, and then the steering column can be centered like it needs to be, to where the steering wheel looks level as you're driving straight. Now I need to mark a spot right there, because my spot, I think, is on the back side, or it's somewhere. Yeah, it's right there, I think. So I'm gonna make another one. It's no big deal. Just make another one, probably right in here somewhere, and then we're gonna drill a hole all the way through, and then we'll put a nut and a bolt through there. So I'm gonna get all that going, and we'll go from there. All right, I'm gonna start with a 1/8 drill bit. Biggest thing I'm worried about is how straight can I get this. This is why I really don't care for having to drill this stuff. Should have came this way. And I knocked my light over. There it is, all the way through. 1/4 inch bolt. And I had a bolt somewhere. There it is. There you go. So what I'm going to do, this is the longest bolt I have with the smooth shaft. That the majority of that smooth shaft is inside here, but there's still plenty of thread coming out. It's not sticking out the other end, basically. I'm using 1/4 28 because I have 1/4 28 locking nuts. Not actual nylon nut locking nuts, but these are the ones that are metal, so that this will always keep that tension, because I don't want this thing backing out, and I really don't trust a lock washer, especially this being curved. The lock washer may not be as effective as this, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use 1/4 28 with a 28 thread locking nut. And once I get it in there, and I'm going to cut off the excess, and this should be pretty much done here. I don't think I need to do anything else. Cotter pin on my castle nut, and this is done. And we can move on to the next step. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put this nut on and go from there. 7/16. Guys, that ain't going nowhere. All right, guys, there it is. Not too bad for a first days of work. Pretty much went from manual steering to power steering box, all ready to go, bolted down. Pitman arms in. Just got to put the little cotter pin on the castle nut, and that one's done. The new, got my there 1/4 bolt through the shaft, locking nut on it. So that should not go anywhere unless I take it off. So not bad for a day's work. This really wasn't too bad. I am a little bit, I think CPP, if they're gonna make a shaft like that that's double-ended, where it uses the double D portion or it uses the round smooth portion, I think they should have provided you with 2 holes. Personally, for me, that's what they should have done. So, but it is what it is. If you're not afraid to do something like this, then it really wasn't that big a deal. It's just take your time, measure, try to get this thing as centered as possible, because you're not going to be using doubtfully you'd use a drill press, so you're probably going to use just a hand drill. So make sure you're balanced. You got your drill as balanced as best as possible. And turned out pretty good. Went in and cut the excess off. I didn't cut too much off, but all that didn't need to be sticking out either. All right, YouTube. Well, that wasn't too bad for a day's work. Basically got the whole manual steering box off of the truck, and we got the new CPP unit brackets, the thing installed, rag joint, Pitman arm, everything's in there. Intermediate shafts in there. Got the hole drilled through it with the 1/4 nut and bolt to keep everything still. So that turned out pretty nice. I want to show y'all that it does come in the kit. If you want to install this cover, you can. You have to remove the more original looking black cover that's already on it with the hex head bolts and change it out, and they give you 4 of these little polished Allen button head screws. So if you want to install this, you can do that. It gives you the 4 bolts. I'm not going to do that because 1, you can't see it, and 2, I really don't care about that part. But I thought it does come in the kit. I'd go ahead and show it. So tomorrow we're going to move over to the power steering bracket and pump, pulley, and get all that stuff done. Change the crank pulley over to the new one I have. And then once that's done, then we can install the hoses. Because it looks like, I've been looking at the lower portion of the fender well, and it looks like I'm going to have to do a little bit of trimming. I don't know how much. So once everything's installed, then we'll figure all that part out. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and call it. I think I'll take a few pictures, so show different angles, so let y'all see what the box looks like, what the brackets look like on the inside, and just kind of give you a better visual of different angles. So don't stop this video. Go ahead and wait. If you want to see those pictures, wait till the end. And guys, I will see y'all tomorrow. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. That way you can keep up to date with everything I'm doing to this truck. All right, guys, until then, I will see y'all tomorrow.